Today on Lilalicious, we are going to make loquat jam. This delicious fruit spread is great on toast, used in desserts, or even as a glaze in savory dishes like a pork roast. Loquats are one of my absolute favorite fruits. In Spanish, they're called níspero, but originally the tree is from China. However, nowadays you will find them all around the world in temperate climates, where they're often planted as ornamentals because of their evergreen foliage. But if you live where there aren't any hard frosts, then you can also enjoy these gorgeous fruits. They are sweet and acidic and a little bit hard to explain because it's similar to apricot and peach and plums maybe, but there's also something quite tropical about the flavor. We have a tree in our yard. It was here when we moved in. First off, you have to harvest loquats. I've never seen them for sale in a store anywhere because they are quite delicate and bruise easily. So the first step is harvesting them either probably from your yard or a neighbor's yard. Give the loquats a rinse, and I suggest using some gloves when you are preparing the fruit because they will stain your hands. And then we also need some lemon juice, 2 to 3 tablespoons. Squeeze that into a large bowl, and then as you are cutting the fruit, you can add it right into the lemon juice. This will keep the fruit from browning. It will oxidize pretty quickly. So when we prepare the loquat, the first step is to cut off the blossom end. Then I cut it in half to remove some of the seeds, and then in quarters. I'm going to show this here just from a few different angles to kind of show you the method of preparing the fruit. We need it in pretty small pieces, so about quarters. And then once I remove the blossom end, I cut through the center. If it's one stone, that can be hard, but often loquats have anywhere from 1 to 5 or 6 seeds in them. And then you just pop out those seeds and cut the rest into quarters. I've seen some people who also peel their loquats, but I have not found that to be necessary. At least the variety we have doesn't have that firm of a skin, and it just would be way too much work. Maybe if you have a bigger variety, that would be feasible. With the small loquats that we have, it would be like peeling grapes or cherries, which, yeah, it's just not worth it for me, and I find it not necessary because I like to puree my jam later on anyway. And then mix it with your lemon juice in the bowl just to kind of coat it everywhere so it won't oxidize. I started out with around 2 pounds or 1 kilo of loquats, and then once the seeds and blossom ends are removed, I was left with about 3/4 of the initial weight. And because loquats already have quite a bit of their own sweetness, and I don't really like too sweet jams, I only use 1/3 of the final fruit weight in sugar. So I had 750 grams of fruit. To that, I added 250 grams of sugar. Mix the loquat chunks and the sugar together until well combined, and let the mixture sit to macerate for 20 to 30 minutes. In that time, the juices will be drawn out from the fruit, and you will see quite a bit of liquid at the bottom. This will help when cooking the jam. You won't need any added water or liquid, and it also won't scorch right away at the bottom. Now add a pinch of sea salt just to balance the flavors, and there's a few options for further flavorings. I like to add a tablespoon of freshly grated ginger, or you can use around a 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger as well. And then I also like to add a cardamom pod for just like a warming spice flavor. Other options are cloves, cinnamon, or even nutmeg. Bring to a boil over medium-high, and once it's nice and bubbly, turn it down to low and cover with the lid. Continue to simmer the loquats for 30 to 45 minutes until the fruits are softening and falling apart. Once the fruit has softened, uncover, and you can either mash it with a potato masher if you like a quite chunky texture to your jam, or use an immersion blender to puree the jam into the texture that you prefer. And then return to the stovetop, bring it to a boil one more time, and your jam is almost ready. Turn off the heat and stir in 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract if using. Prepare some glass jars by sterilizing them in hot water in the oven or on the steam function of your Instant Pot. I ended up with 3 cups of jam, which was exactly enough to fill 2 12-ounce jars. If you're going to use up your jam pretty quickly, you can just close the lids fairly tight and turn them upside down and let them cool this way. Store the jam in the fridge once it's fully cooled and use within about a month. If you want to make the jam shelf stable, you need to process them in a water bath canner. After filling the hot jam into the jars, close the lids just wrist height and add them to a pot filled with hot water. Make sure the water level covers the jars by 1 to 2 inches. Then bring to a rolling boil, cover with the lid and boil for 10 minutes if using 8 to 12 ounce jars. If you use a bigger jar, like 16 ounces, then you need to boil for 15 minutes. Then turn off the heat and let everything cool in the water for about 10 minutes, and then you can remove the jars and let them cool fully at room temperature. Now the jars are shelf stable and can be stored at room temperature for about a year or so. We love to enjoy Loquat jam on buttered toast, fresh homemade sourdough bread, yogurt, ice cream, cottage cheese. There are really so many options. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have access to fresh loquats, I hope you try this jam so you can enjoy the flavor of amazing loquats for longer than just their fairly short season once a year. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you soon with another delicious recipe. Bye for now.